everyone. I'm here with Bryce Turner from Beach Fitness Doha, USA, from Seal Beach, and we are going to chat. It's not an interview; it's a chat regarding a focus regarding something that we like, Bryce. That is teaching to young generation, kids, teenager, right? And we both love to work with them. And as I wrote today on my post on Instagram, probably our backgrounds influence the way we teach, right? Our background, and probably yours is more performance oriented. You are training and you explain to who is watching us what you are doing with your youth performance program. And I work here with my kids, with my teenager, mostly teenager, because I work with Veronica, which is a pediatric osteopath that often sent me kids and teenager, like from 8 to 18 years old, both for Pilates or for Eldoa and so much stuff. So yes, we both love to work with them, and I have to tell you that they kill me.
Yes,
they kill me, but I have a lot of fun working with them.
Yeah.
And working with them is like doing 2 or 3 hours with an adult, right? Because they really kill you.
Yes.
You have to be super focused with them.
We call them energy vampires. They take a lot out of you.
Yes, energy vampire. It's quite similar in Italian. I perfectly understand what you mean. And
Right.
yes, you have to be super focused when you work with them. Probably I work more with like one-on-one session, and you work more with group, right?
Yeah, we do a combination of both, but there tends to be more group style classes or performance training programming going like that.
Because when I was there, I never see you working with one kid. That's because that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
I'm asking you. And now here I'm thinking to something to work with kids, elder oriented. It's funny because I want to launch this, but I don't want to tell what I'm working on.
Yeah.
But,
you don't want to tell me, or you don't want to tell the world?
I don't want to tell the world. I know that I can tell you. Maybe. Not sure.
Maybe.
Not sure. So I sent you some notes a few days ago regarding this, and one of these notes regard overweight, because here is a problem. I'm not saying obesity. That probably is more an American issue.
Word. Right? Yeah, right.
Here there is a worrying situation regarding kids which are overweight here. This is the situation here. In general, in my opinion, kids don't play enough sport. Okay, and as I said, when I send you that note, I wrote that here boy, of course, have a sort of fixation for soccer. So it's soccer, and that's it. And that's it. And there is a sort of I don't know how do you call it in English, when you monitor the situation, and they say that when they start the high school, they definitely don't play sport. And that kind of like weeds out a lot of the athletes or the kids playing sports. Yes, that's it. Or if, of course, if they are preparing themselves for something specific, sport-oriented, yes. But in general, if they play sport for fun, they stop it.
Yeah.
This is worrying, together with the story of the obesity and overweight.
Well, let me give you a little background real quick. So early on in my career as a trainer, the company that I was working for started a nonprofit that I was part of the board of developing the vision of that nonprofit, which was to help kids fight childhood obesity. right? Which, as you mentioned, is definitely more of a problem, I think, here in the States, which, if we keep kind of coming back to the main reasons why is, you've got all the dietary reasons, like the food is not necessarily good, or the options of food are not necessarily good. The activity level is not so great. And then on top of it is you have the tech world, right? Which is allowing kids to sit around and play video games or be on their phone and create more of a sedentary lifestyle. And so we worked really hard for many years to really spread the word and try to support the younger generation in understanding what proper health was and what proper exercise was through this nonprofit. And as rewarding as the work was, it's an uphill battle because, you look at different demographics of people and different areas of, where people live and what they have access to and what their money allows them to do. And as I've, over the last, 15 years, since we've done that nonprofit, almost 20 years actually, and I have my own kids, and watching my own kids develop and be active in sports and whatnot, it's kind of engaged me in this environment, because now I'm dealing with my own kids, kind of living this lifestyle and understanding what proper food is and activity levels are. And so we're re-engaging that nonprofit. So our goal right now is to set up this nonprofit as a pathway or an arm to educate youth and involve them in activities and give them better education about how to keep healthy in their life. And, obviously, as you said, we have our background of knowledge. How do we share this background of knowledge to the younger generations? Because, even the older generation still doesn't really know a lot of what we do. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult as well. But we've done a lot of work with the local schools. Like we have a ongoing relationship with one of the school districts out here that we teach a lot to their physical education teachers, to bring in LDOA and different, concepts of exercise and education into the schools for them to share with the students, so that, posturally they're better, functionally they're better, and then they can actually, educate them on all the lifestyle things as well to try to manage them. So it's been 20 years in the works, essentially.
It's great, this idea of spreading LDOA and like a sort of, education in the school.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I'm always compare LDOA with what Dr. Boyer invented,
Right.
with what Joseph Pilates invented. And his dream, Joseph Pilates' dream, was to see his exercises and to see people doing his exercises. At that time, he didn't call it Pilates because it was his method, so he called it control. Right. The contrology method in all the school, in every corner, in every city, everywhere. So it's exactly what you are saying. Do you think this could happen with LDOA? It's what you are trying to do. It's what you are trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. Like we're trying to implement, as one of the tools in the exercise program, a lot of it, as much as it's, hey, we need to keep the body composition of kids and the health of the kids organized, structurally we look at things and we say, okay, what can they do that's very simple to manage the overall structure of their body so that they don't have pain and dysfunction and things like that, or compromise something later in life, or if they are in an adolescent age and they're growing fast and they have a scoliosis, whether it's from childbirth or it's developed over time, what are the tools that we can give them to try to, that are relatively easy to improve their bodies? And, like on the mass scale, if we can get that into the schools more regularly, and the physical education teachers can implement that when they have to go to some sort of exercise regimen, and you're kind of encompassing all the kids, because there's kids that play sports and there's kids that are active with other activities and things like that, like dance and whatever it is they do, but there's a lot of kids that don't do anything. And school's really the only common denominator that forces the kids to essentially do something active. And if we can build LDOA education into the schools, you're kind of hitting it from the start. And that's what we've tried to do now for many years.
How many hours they do? I mean, students in general. I mean, like in middle school. Okay, how many hours of physical education they do in a week?
A day? Oh, in a week. You figure.
I mean, at school.
Yeah, like every class. If they're in middle school and they're going class to class, they probably have about a 40-minute time frame per day that they're doing something active, which is not a lot. It's not a lot.
How is the situation here? Here they have 1 hour in a week.
Oh, wow.
At middle school, and the same at the high school.
Yeah. Well, I think, and this is not to go off on a tangent, but there's this mentality, I think, with a lot of the kids that they want to be lazy, right? And if they show up to a physical education class and the goal of the class is to do a 1-mile run, right, or run a couple kilometers, that a lot of the kids will make excuses that they don't want to do it. And in today's society, it's hard to argue with kids not feeling good and having a PE instructor or a teacher say, no, you're going to do it anyways, because then it's, damaging to the psyche of the kid, or, not accepted in today's terms. So there's a lot of roadblocks that kind of get in the way, depending on, again, what the sort of mental constitution of the kid is and what's allowed at the different schools.
Yes. And when you teach them, do you allow parents to be there?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're at school, usually the parents won't be there, right? If we are teaching a class here at our facility and there's kids here, we allow the parents to stick around, as long as they're not interrupting and distracting the kid from what it is they need to do.
Even if you have a one-on-one session with a kid, you allow it? Yes.
Yeah, but again, like a lot of the times, as long as it doesn't distract the kid, because a lot of the parents want to insert themselves immediately into a program or to give feedback during the time of coaching. And I want to make sure that there's a little bit of a removal time, because every kid has their own psychological interaction, especially when they're around somebody else. And they tend to listen different, they tend to communicate different. And sometimes it's better, it can be dysfunctional when there's a parent around, because there's this stress between the child and the parent. And sometimes those kids don't interact as well when the parent is there. So then I ask the parent to leave. But, I don't have a problem if they're there to watch. If they try to insert themselves, and I'm like, okay, parent, you need to walk away.
I don't really say, okay, I don't allow them to assist, but I prefer it doesn't happen.
That they're not there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I agree with that.
Here it's totally different. The situation is exactly like in this moment, so super silent, super different than your studio. And we are like just me and the kid, the student, the clients in general, the young client. And I noted that they are super silent, super shy when there is their parent around. And when the parent leave, boom, it's another kid. Yeah. And maybe because it's just we are just in two, they open themselves. And even today in the post that I wrote, I talk about this like a sort of, I don't know if depend of, I'm a woman. I don't know if there is another relationship, another approach, probably. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that is the reason, I don't know. But yes, I don't like to have them around. They open themselves, they tell you many things. And I was thinking to many girls, for example, that I train, especially it happened in the past, but it happened unfortunately very often. I'm talking about eating disorder. Mm-hmm. And when you are alone, especially in front of a teenager in like 15 years old.
It's very important. Mm. You have to have that privacy time.
Yes, and it happened if you are in front of a woman, and when it happened, and I told you it happened unfortunately too often. that I hear some mother telling me, okay, I'm happy that she works with you. And if you can do it something for her overweight or for her thighs or for her, and I'm frozen when they tell me like that.
It's
And I
crazy.
always
I was
answer,
just thinking of a story of that,
and
and I'm glad that
I always answer, she's perfect. She's maybe she's not perfect, but she's perfect because they are damaging their daughter.
100%.
And I
Yeah,
always tell,
I used to do nutritional coaching for some of, like families, so the families would come in, and I immediately got disinterested in this, work because it was so dysfunctional. But, you'd have sort of these teenager level kids that would come in, and the parents would be like, oh, well, my kids are overweight, and, they just don't exercise enough. And, they really don't follow a good diet. And I try to tell them to eat healthy and all this stuff. So the parent is just sitting there complaining about what they think the problem is. And then I'm like, okay, parents, you leave, let me talk to the kids. And then the kids have a completely different story where it's like, well, I come home and I want to eat something healthy, or I want to eat something, but we only have like junk food at the house. Or sometimes there's not food ready or available, and I'm kind of going from activity to activity and I need to grab something. So I just go and grab fast food real quick. And, or the parent is openly kind of giving them negative feedback all the time, like, oh, you're fat, and oh, you're overweight, and you really need to do something about it, and like, how can you live like that? And it just like crushes them, right? And so maybe they eat to feel better about themselves because that's sort of their release. And so I immediately start to identify that really a lot of the times it's not the kids that are having the issue, it's really the parents on top of the kids giving the issue. And so then usually I'll call the parents back in, and you know how I am, because you and I are very much the same. I give very direct feedback to the parent, and the parents don't like it. They don't like to hear that it's them causing the problem. And so that's why that work is challenging, because I'm a pretty direct person when it comes to feedback like that. And some people don't like that honesty, and they don't like to hear that they're part of the problem. And so that's where we're doing the work with the kids early on and trying to educate them, like, okay, when you get home, what are you going to eat? Like, what is it that's there? What are some good choices that you can have? And to have the kids answer those questions and say, oh yeah, I want to eat some fruit, or I want to eat, some protein, whether it's like chicken or different things. Like, what are some healthy options that you can do? Do you drink enough water? What kind of snacks are you having during the day? Here are the foods to try to stay away from, in their life, because, whether it's an affordability factor and they eat poor quality of food, or they just don't have the options around them, the kids have to start thinking for themselves at some point. And the parents tend to react sort of out of routine of what they think is what they should buy. Like, sorry for another story, but I had another mom in here, and she goes, oh, my daughter, I wish she'd just lose weight. And she goes, she just eats a bunch of crap. And I go, what do you mean she eats a bunch of crap? And she goes, well, she'll come home and just eat cookies and all this, and chips and all this stuff. And I go, but that food's in the house. And she goes, well, she doesn't have to eat it. I go, but you buy it. And I go, so if you don't want her to eat it, then don't buy it. She goes, well, it's just sort of the food run of things that we buy all the time. So we just have a cabinet of this kinds of food. And I go, but that doesn't make it okay. Like, you have to, if you're going to ask your kid to change, you need to change what's available for them as well, so.
Of course. I'm not an expert in nutrition, so I don't give this kind of advice, and they don't ask me for it, but it's something that I told you happen super, unfortunately, super often. And I know this because I know, maybe there is the summer break, and then you see again the girl after 3 months of vacation, and then how you are a super father, so it. They change so quickly, no? And now you are in front of a woman, and you say, oh, what happened? And you understand that something is happening because they cover themselves a lot. This girl covered herself with big t-shirt, etc., and then they start and then they are a little bit more introvert, and you understand that there is something wrong, and it happened to me to explain them to tell them my story, and so I'm very, you said, I'm open. I'm an open book. So I often tell them, to these girls, that I suffer by eating disorder for, how do we call it in English? Anorexia? Anorexia, we call it in Italian.
Yeah, anorexia. That's what we said. Same word.
And I suffer from it from my 17 to my 19, and I tell them the story, and I said, okay, you can see me how tall I am, and I can tell you that I was like this, and this connect us more, and this remind me that in that case we are not just trainer, we are educator in that
right
case. It's different. Right. Really different.
It goes hand in hand.
Yes. And another point that I want to cover, and it's linked to this, it's COVID. Because here, as you perfectly know, they close not just the gyms, but also the schools for 1 year and a half. Okay. So, yes. And you know that our lockdown was a real lockdown. Not exactly like in China, but almost. Right. So they stay home for 1 year and a half. They were crazy, and totally. And I noted in my teenager an increased level of anxiety and stress and depression too. All things that do not stay in the same sentence. I mean, kids and anxiety, kids and stress, they don't have to stay together, in my opinion. Okay, but it happened, and I remember this girl. She was, COVID happened when she was in the transition moment between the mid school and high school. So, which is an awful moment in everyone's life, right? You are 13, 14, so it's not funny. And COVID happened. And she arrived here after COVID with terrible headaches, terrible panic attack, and everything. All the diagnostic tests were negative. She has nothing. It was stress because of COVID. Yeah. And it wasn't easy to me, but I was happy to find the key to work with her. So I basically follow her mood. So in the good day, I wanted her to get tired. So a lot of squat, a lot of plank, a lot of stuff like that. I wanted to get tired because of stress. And in the bad day with terrible headache, I work a lot with LDOA, a lot of general LDOA, a lot of C0, 1 and 2, C2 and 3, breathing exercise, diaphragm, stuff like that. And it happened, it helped her a lot. How is, because you didn't have that kind of lockdown that we have, right? You told me that it was right. You showed me in Orange County.
There was variability depending on where you lived.
Exactly, but not so. Did you notice an increased level of stress in your kids?
Oh, 100%. I think it was hard to really measure my kids because, again, like during those years, they were still relatively young. And when I say that, below 12, so, they were like 9, 10, 11, it was my oldest. And so they're just kind of going with the flow. Like that just becomes the new normal, right? And so they were just kind of doing what they were being told. But there was definitely, I know, some emotional stress, when they couldn't see their friends very often, or like hardly at all, especially in the beginning stages of it. When you're all cooped up in one house, there's a stress, when everybody's just kind of cohabitating together all the time, and you try to make the best of it. But yeah, there was all those things. And I think that, they didn't really know the full spectrum of what was going on. But aside from having a gym facility that was effectively shut down, I remember the stress not only just being the financial stress and the work stress and like what's happening in the world stress kind of stuff, but even when everybody was masked up, I felt myself getting depressed because you didn't see people's faces anymore, and that would drive me crazy more than anything. Is like, if somebody smiled or laughed, you didn't see their smile or laugh, right? And so it was little things like that that just kind of, snowballed as the pandemic went forward, that became very frustrating about the process. And, you had these polar opposite sort of, conditions of society that said, okay, this was this and this was this. And it was funny because even looking at some of our clients or even some kids, if they got really sedentary during the pandemic because they were in lockdown, they ate a lot, they gained weight, then there was depression. And the only thing that was making them really happy or have some sort of stimulation in their life was to eat, right? Because you couldn't do a lot of things. And so why not, let's just drink every day and eat whatever we want, and we're just going to lay around and be bums and things like that. So there was a lot of things that kind of came out of that I think was tough. But as you even mentioned, I mean, I can't even imagine the kids that were, college, high school level. I think those are the most probably influential levels. If you were graduating at such a, momentous time of your life, and you couldn't share that with anybody, you couldn't walk down, the aisle or on the stage and get your diploma and have your family there and everybody cheering for you or whatever, like what a disaster, right? To go through that kind of time of your life, which only happens once, a high school graduation or a college graduation, or even if you were an athlete at that time, you couldn't play your senior year of your sport, and really show your dominance or, really take it to the next level. It was just nothing, right? So that whole sort of 2 to 3 year period was sort of this, time where things just stopped. And it just kind of got erased from time, and people really couldn't, show or excel the way they probably could have in a normal environment. So.
Yes, definitely. Bryce, we could talk about other 100 topics, but I know that you have to go.
No, that's all right.
Just last question for you. Explain to the world what is your youth performance project?
Yeah, so I mean, even just to kind of echo some of the things we were talking about, here in the States, again, childhood obesity is kind of a big thing. You're looking at 1 in 5 kids is obese, and you have to assume if they're obese, you're assuming they're unhealthy, right? And in that 5 kid statistic, you could have a non-obese kid but not be healthy also. So it's not just about the body weight or the body composition, when you look at some of these children. But in general, it's making sure that they're eating healthy and that they have a good sort of constitution and philosophy about their life, moving forward, that they can make positive decisions about, who they are as an individual. And that might be because of sports performance. It could be because they want to be a particular student. It's getting the kids to be more mindful about what it is that they're doing every single day. And that's really sort of the foundation of even our sports performance program, is really getting the kids to be more mindful and to think for themselves. Our program usually starts at age 7 or 8. And that's usually, if we look at that demographic of kid, it has to be a kid that is ready for it, because there's definitely kids that age that aren't ready for coaching, right? And so they need a little bit more time. So that's the earliest that we go. And my youngest right now is 7 years old, and he's a pretty mature 7-year-old. So he can hang with, the 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds and listen and perform and do what he's supposed to do. But in general, the foundation of the program was, okay, how do you be a better human? Number one, right? Like, how do you respect, your coaches or your parents or the people around you in your community? How do you listen? How do you look? How do you interact with somebody? And that may not sound very sports performance based, but it really is, because you need to be able to show respect to your coaches. You need to be able to look somebody in the eye. You need to be able to shake somebody's hand. You need to be able to communicate with somebody. And then the other part of it was always lifestyle, like talking to them about their diet, talking to them about hydration, talking to them about, the moving parts of what makes them a healthy individual from the background of their body. And then aside from that was looking at what is their actual activity level? How does their body move? How are they aware of and intentful about how their body moves? So, do you know how to do a squat? Do you know how to manage your spine? Do you know how to balance on one foot? and really from sort of the ground up, really building their awareness in their own body about how they do move, and understanding what being a kid a lot of the time is just very mindless, right? Like, I'm going to go climb a tree, but they don't really think about, okay, my right hand goes here and my left hand goes there. They just go do it, right? I'm going to go run across the field, and they just go do it, or whatever, the process is. And then all of a sudden they start to get into more of an organized sport fashion, and sort of the natural ability starts to be challenged. And so there needs to be more focused attention to how their bodies are moving. And so you start to create more of awareness and more drills and more skills and more coordination and things like that. And that's really the pinnacle of creating better movement in any of the kids. And then we try to capitalize on top of that in regards to, how old are they? What is their sport? What is their body really requiring? But even, we try not to be very specific. There's a lot of promotion, even with youth performance now, that says, there's some kids that, like say for your country, a lot of kids play soccer, right? They're playing football, and that's it, right? Like, if they don't have a lot of other variety of sports, that becomes a problem, right? And so in our culture, my kids play baseball and soccer and basketball and football, and my daughter dances sometimes, and like all these different things that we try to get them to do, and that becomes sort of their variety and baseline of how they're educating their bodies to move as much as possible, and not to be so pigeonholed in one direction with a sport or a movement. And that's effectively, for our sports performance program, how we organize it is, we don't make it necessarily specific to one sport. We make it just specific to movement in their bodies, so that they just get better at doing that. And really, weights and resistance and all that stuff is sort of like an after fact, that we really only look at the older kids to really start to load their bodies. Or if they're a very coordinated individual and they've been in the program for a while, then we might allow them to start loading their bodies. There's a lot of statistics back and forth of whether or not kids should load themselves, right? Like, how early is it for a kid to actually lift weights? And I think most of the statistics will say, even today, because the lens has kind of changed a little bit as far as how that works, that it's more around 8 to 10. But as long as they're more of a sophisticated kid and they have a coach that's working with them to try to implement what kind of programming that they should do, and not just going and grabbing a bunch of weights or being unsupervised in a gym environment and just doing stuff that maybe isn't healthy for their bodies, because any kid can injure their spine or a knee or a hip just as much as any adult can, especially if they're doing something wrong under, some sort of resistance or load. So we really try to watch that. And, I had to go through a little bit of it, even with my own son, who was training quite a bit in his own sports programming. And he was training and he was practicing with his team, and he was training and practicing with his team. And I think what's most important is, what is the volume and output of that kid? Because if they're doing too much too fast, then that becomes more and more of a problem, right? And they can injure themselves very quickly. So my son had a growth plate injury in his shoulder because he was just overtraining. And, I think that you get an aggressive parent that wants their kid to be the best, and they train and they train and they throw things at them all the time, and all of a sudden they've injured their kid, right? And that becomes a problem, and they don't even realize it. And I realize it, and my kid got injured. But like, when I took a step back after his injury and go, okay, what was his training regimen and what was happening at that time? I was like, oh, wow, I wasn't accounting for his play time, his practice time, and then his own workout regimen time. Because my son has learned in his own life that if he's going to be healthy and he's going to be good, he has to work at it. And so he works at it. He's become very regimented in saying, I come home and I do my stretches at night, I do my Eldoas at night, I don't drink soda, I want to eat healthy food. Like, he's very mindful of all of those things. And we've taught him that from day one. And so he exudes that in his life, because he wants to be a good person, and he wants to be healthy, and he wants to be successful in his sports and at school and things like that. So all of a sudden you put all that together, and it was like, wow, you were really overtraining yourself. And kids need time where they don't do anything. And I think that that's hard in this day and age too, because it's, there's a lot of parents, again, that are almost competitive with themselves, where the parent is the problem again. And they're throwing their kids into all of these activities and all these things. And that may be helpful and beneficial for them, but too much is too much. And kids need time just to not do anything, and they need to relax, especially if they're a very inactive kid, to allow their bodies to basically heal and recover. And so that's where even Eldoa becomes into the equation as really one of our sort of different focuses that we do with the kids, which is we do myofascial stretching with the kids, we do Eldoa with the kids, because those are fantastic recovery exercises that they just don't get anywhere else, and they're so beneficial. And you know, a lot of that has come from the testing of even working with professional athletes. Sorry.
What happened? Oh, you are upside down. Now you are okay. But I can hear you, Bryce. Something happened. Talk to me. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Bryce, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Another call came in and I tried to hang up on it and it ended up answering it.
You kill him.
We'll edit that out. So in general, you know, looking at things that we do, just managing balance, right? Managing the stress of the individual. And, you know, because, you know, you can have on one end of the spectrum a kid that doesn't do anything and becomes obese and unhealthy. And you can have a kid on the other end doing way too much, and that creates dysfunction and unhealthiness and things like that. That there needs to be, you know, some coordination in there. And every parent and every coach should be focused on all of those things, making sure that they're not putting their own goals in front of the kid, you know. And I think that that's hard, because we glorify the idea of being this amazing, you know, sort of athletic person. You know, that becomes like such a pinnacle of, I think, a lot of society today, especially here in the States.
Yes, definitely. Okay, Bryce, we could talk about this for hours.
I know, it's great. I can't believe that the time went by as fast as it did.
It's a big topic. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll have a part 2 soon.
Oh yes, when you want.
Part 4. It'll be talk with Laura and Bryce.
Oh yes, we can talk the Eldoa television.
That's right.
Or Bryce, remember that I'm still recording. This could be the first the first episode of a fantastic podcast.
I love it.
And I leave you with this. Okay?
Yes.
I leave you and who is watching us. Thank you, Bryce. Stay there.
Okay. All right. Eldoa Revolution, take over.
Oh, yes. Ciao.
Ciao.